Side Hustle Show 74, turn your car into a cash machine. How to make money driving in your spare time.
Welcome to the Side Hustle Show, where aspiring part-time entrepreneurs learn how to turn their side hustle dreams into reality. Because your 9 to 5 may make you a living, but your 5 to 9 makes you alive. And now, your host, Nick Loper.
Hey everybody, Nick Loper here. Welcome to the Side Hustle Show. This is episode 74. It's about how to make money driving in your spare time. Have you got a car? Maybe you're listening in your car right now. Well, this is the show for you. I'm joined by Harry Campbell from TheRideshareGuy.com, talking all about the ride-sharing economy, which, his site, The Rideshare Guy, another example of a cool authority site that we've been talking about the past few episodes. But this is all about how to tap into the existing services like Lyft and Uber to generate some income in your spare time. And before we get into a couple news and update items, so the first order of business is like if there's anyone you'd like to hear from on the show, or if there's any topic you'd like to hear covered. I know some people have mentioned drop shipping, which is definitely on my radar. In an upcoming episode, let me know. I'm recording now for the fall season and want to make sure to produce material that's helpful for you and that stuff you want to learn about. So, you're familiar with the show. So any sort of compelling side hustle success story, especially if it's transferable, repeatable, that definitely fits the bill. So let me know at Nick at sidehustlenation.com. And it's been a long time since we've done any iTunes shouts, and so I'm really far behind on these, but thank you so much for the reviews. Keep them coming at sidehustlenation.com/iTunes. I think we're closing in on 100 in the US store, so that would be awesome to get to by the end of the year. But this one, so I've got 4 new 5-star reviews. These come in from, first one is from VMix. It says 20-mile march. I'm making slow but better progress than before on my idea. Thank you so much. I would rate it 100 out of 5. Must subscribe. Thank you so much for that. This Jared says, I usually listen to podcasts while I'm driving, but I frequently find myself revisiting sidehustlenation.com when I get home so I can take notes. Thank you so much for that. Bob over at Save the Six says, thank you so much for the value and knowledge. Nick's podcast is consistently one of the best each and every week. That definitely means a lot to me. So thank you so much for that. And then finally, Pintuplet says 5 stars, valuable information that's truly inspiring. I discovered Nick's show while I was I was at work planning my escape. So that means a lot to me as well. Thank you so much for guys. Again, if you haven't done so yet, really, really appreciate the reviews at sidehustlenation.com/iTunes. I compiled all my notes and highlights from this episode into a free downloadable PDF at sidehustlenation.com/74, or you can access it through the episode description of your podcast player app. And with that, let's get into the ride-sharing economy with the rideshare guy, Harry Campbell. Hey, Harry, welcome to the Side Hustle Show.
Thanks, Nick. I'm glad to be on.
I took my first Lyft rides in August in Dallas for Podcast Movement, and I met 3 awesome side hustlers like yourself, and it was like, this is really, really cool. And then, we connected just really shortly after that, and I was like, dude, I got to have this guy on the show, the Rideshare Guy. So how long have you been driving?
So I've actually been driving 4 or 5 months now, and I actually started just like you. I was a passenger. I love the service, taking Lyft and Uber or whatever. And, one of the guys kind of mentioned that they were looking for drivers, and so I applied, and within a week I was driving.
What's the application process like?
The application process is pretty simple. I started off with Lyft, and with Lyft, you can do it all from your phone. You can actually do it from your rider account. You just hit the little driving wheel, and you fill out some information, watch some videos, and, they do a full background check, so it takes a few days to process that and, make sure everything's okay with your driving record, and then you meet up and do a mentor ride. It's kind of like a little mini interview, and as long as you pass that, you're ready to drive.
Wow. Okay. I was going to ask about the background check thing. I was like, do they let just anybody, sign up for this? Or like, what happens if you're like a creeper or a rapist or something? But it sounds like is it that stuff, that kind of background check, or like you have a million traffic violations, or you like have been in an accident every month of your life?
Yeah, definitely. No, I've kind of learned because at first I didn't even really think about that to mention that, but now people have been asking me, so I know to mention that background check. People want to know, are they getting in the car with some weirdo? Who is this Harry, the rideshare guy? Is he
And I
total
never even
creep or
thought
what?
about that. I never even thought about that. But then, one of the women I met at the conference, I was like, dude, I took my first Lyft ride. It was awesome. And she was like, dude, you got into a car with a total stranger. I was like, I never thought of it that way, but yes.
Yeah, it's you don't really think about it until someone tells you. But no, it's definitely they do a full background check, kind of like when you're screening a tenant or something like that. So on that side, to make sure you don't have any arrest warrants or anything like that out for you. And then they also check your driving record because you can't have things like DUIs and you can't have too many major accidents, within the past year or 2 years, and
Okay.
things like that.
How about on the passenger side? Like, what kind of, because they didn't do any background check on me as a passenger to take this
Yeah.
service. Like,
There's
is there any
definitely
protections?
no background checks for the passengers, but so I don't know if every passenger knows this, but as a passenger, you get to rate your driver. And so when you call them, you see, okay, this guy's a 4.6, 4.8. Oh, perfect, 5 stars. And as a driver, once they get out of the car, you get to rate your passenger too. So as a driver, when I get a call, it'll say, Nick, he's a 4.7. I say, all right, I'll pick this guy up.
Okay. Oh, but if I'm like a 4.0 or like a 3 or something, you'd be like, not gonna take my chances on this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever given a passenger below maybe once or twice if someone was, just absurdly drunk. I gave them less than a 5, but it's, most passengers have 5 stars or very high ratings. And so when you do get that occasional, really low rated passenger, it kind of makes you double check. I mean, I've still accepted low rated passengers and it's been fine, but you do have the option as a driver if you don't want to take a low rated passenger.
Okay. So it's like there's some veto power, and that's all you get is a little profile picture and a star rating. Be like, do I want to let this guy into my car?
That's pretty much it. And if it's something really egregious, you can obviously contact Lyft and or Uber and tell them, hey, I just had this passenger and he was doing this or that, and they'll take care of things like that pretty quickly.
So if I want to sign up, so it's going to take a week or two before I'm up and running.
Yeah.
Do I have to have like a nice car?
Well, so you don't have to have a nice car. I think that's kind of a misconception. There are a lot of nice cars out there. And, I actually, I feature articles on my site every week. And I featured a pretty funny article that a lot of Prius drivers now, they get random people just opening their doors because they think it's an Uber.
Oh, okay. That's like a very common like Uber X car.
Yeah, it's a very common car, because of the gas mileage. And, now there's people that don't drive for Uber and, people are just kind of randomly opening their doors because they think they are Ubers. But, so the requirements are 2006 or newer car. And if you have a 2004, there's kind of ways you can meet up with a recruiter in person and sometimes let them approve it. But it's 2006 or newer and then 4 doors. So that's pretty much the only requirements as far as the car.
Okay, so I would qualify. I drive an '06 Escape. It's a little bit beat up, but it is 2006 and does have 4 doors.
Right on. So you would just barely slide in.
Probably next year, they'll probably be like, all right, we updated to 2007, or now you're out of luck.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can't have any, major dents or, and you have to get, now they're requiring 20-point inspection checks with a mechanic, just to make sure that, your brakes are working, your lights are working, and, everything about your car is working because, you are transporting other people.
Yeah, I would probably want to upgrade before going into there. No, the cars I drove in were all very, in really good shape. So I think that's part of it too. Like very clean, very, that's part of the, the passenger experience as well. Like
definitely.
Somebody shows up in a dirty ass, like beater car, then you're like, wait a minute, what did I just get myself into?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. That's what's good. I mean, from a passenger point of view, it's great because, if for some reason your driver shows up with, just a completely crap car or something is dirty, or you can give them a low rating. And as a driver, it's pretty strict. You have to maintain a 4.6 on Uber and a 4.5 on Lyft. If your rating drops below that, they'll give you 1 warning and then you get kicked off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I kind of live out in the burbs. So we're about 45 minutes east of San Francisco.
Okay.
And my question is, I'm like bringing up the map now to see if there's any drivers near me. Do I have to go? Like, I would probably have to go downtown or something. Like, if I really wanted to make an evening of this, or like try and do something like where you mentioned you're in Southern California, so it's pretty populated area throughout.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm in Orange County, so I'm just south of LA. And, Orange County is actually considered a smaller market when it comes to Lyft and Uber. LA and San Francisco are probably two of the bigger markets, big if not the biggest. And, you can definitely get rides in those smaller areas. But, if you want to make, better money and get more consistent rides, you definitely drive into the city. And, that's a cool thing, though, because I've heard from drivers who live out in the burbs, maybe 30, 40 minutes. If the service is active out there, then, they might get a ride into San Francisco, and you can get paid to drive someone into San Francisco. You work a little bit, and then when you're ready, you can drive home. You might not get a ride back home, but at least one of the ways you'll get covered.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so if you're relatively close to a major metropolitan area, now are all of these services, are they pretty much nationwide at this point?
Uber is definitely a little bit bigger. They're in more cities than Lyft right now, but in every major city, Uber and Lyft are both there. There's actually a third company that I also drive for occasionally called Sidecar, and you may have heard of it because it's pretty big in San Francisco and LA, and so they're just a different one. So they're definitely still growing and expanding. Uber is actually in worldwide cities too.
Oh wow, that's fancy. So what's the difference between the two? They don't make you sign like an exclusivity clause or something when you sign up?
No, it's actually, I do it as a side hustle, and hence why I'm on your podcast. But, so it is cool because you are 1099, which opens up a lot of good tax deductions. But you also are independent contractor, right? You paid 1099, so you're kind of free to drive for whoever you want. I usually drive for Uber and Lyft at the same time. So I'll have both apps on, and whichever one I get a request for first, I'll take that and turn off the other app until I'm done with the ride.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk about the earning potential, like, or maybe in terms of an hourly rate or what you can make in a weekend or something. What's the, what can someone earn doing this?
Yeah, definitely. You may have heard stories about people making some pretty good money, probably some pretty absurd money in the past year or two. And when it was so new, you could pretty much turn the app on at any time of the day and, weekday, weekend, and make pretty $20-30 an hour. And it's definitely gone down since then. But, more drivers on the road, and they've lowered their prices a little bit. What I usually shoot for about $20 to $30 an hour is my goal. And I usually get right around there. Like I said, I drive on the side. So that kind of enables me to drive when the busier times, Friday, Saturday nights, holidays.
Okay.
That's when I primarily try to drive. If you just try to turn it on, in the middle of the day, you're obviously not going to make anywhere near that. Maybe, $10 an hour if you turn it on at 1 p.m. in the middle of the day. So it really kind of depends on your situation.
That makes sense. So like during, periods of higher demand and, more populated areas or whatever, you could make more. Do you, what's the revenue split between the driver and the company?
So you get to keep 80% of the fare, and they take 20%. So on the average ride, whatever it is, if it's $10, they'll keep $2. And with the Uber, it's a little bit deceiving because they show you the full amount. And so then when you get your pay stub the next week, you realize, oh, wait, now they're taking their 20%. But, I think it's pretty reasonable, and you can still make some pretty good money.
Yeah, one driver I was talking to in Dallas said he was up to $1,000 a week doing it, maybe, but he was driving like 30 hours, he told me.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's definitely right now. And the other thing is because the pricing is so variable. The Uber and Lyft are always changing their prices, sometimes mainly for the worse. But, just because right now it's a great time to be a passenger because things are getting cheaper. There's huge competition between Uber and Lyft right now to recruit, new passengers, and which is, good for the service in the long run. But for now, maybe prices are going to be a little bit lower for drivers. So they kind of just had a big 20% cut for both services.
Oh, wow.
A a couple, 3 or 4 weeks ago. So prices have gone down a little bit, and hopefully it's only temporary. But at the same time, if it's your full time, you're probably going to be pretty upset. But if you're able to do it on the side, you can still take advantage of those busy times.
On the passenger side, which one is the better one to go for?
On the passenger side, I'd say Lyft is usually cheaper, but personally, I kind of just take whatever is more convenient. They're very close though in almost every city. So, and then it's hard to keep up with all of the changing prices. But I actually have a spreadsheet on my site for drivers that lets you know how much more you'll make in each city, for a comparable ride.
Okay.
But,
okay. What, and then Sidecar is similar. They're just smaller, or they're not in as many cities yet.
Yeah, Sidecar is actually, I don't know. I'm really kind of pulling for Sidecar because I think their business model is really cool, and most people haven't really heard of them. There's actually quite a few rideshare companies out there you probably never heard of. I'd say it's getting in the hundreds. It's pretty crazy.
Oh, really? Wow.
But yeah,
everybody just kind of copycat companies.
Yeah, and they all have kind of their own little thing. Like there's a food delivery service called Postmates that's getting pretty big, and people drive for that and basically deliver food. And there's lots of, you can rent out your own car, leave it at the airport. That's getting pretty big in San Francisco. So you can actually rent someone else's car. That's called relay rides. It's pretty cool time to be in rideshare. And as far as Sidecar, what I really like about them and why I kind of hope that they get a little bigger is that as a driver, you can set your pickup radius. So if I only want to pick up people within 2 miles, I can set that. And if I only want to drop off in a certain area, I can set a drop-off radius. So in your situation, if you wanted to drive from your house into the city, you could set a big 5-mile radius by your house and a big 10-mile radius anywhere within the city. And now you're going to get paid for that ride from your house to San Francisco.
Okay. Instead of, this person wants to drive to Nevada and be like, well, I didn't really budget time in for that, but that's
because that does happen. And, I've gotten requests where, they wanted to drive, 45 minutes away, and, if it's kind of unreasonable, you can tell them no, but at that point, you've already picked them up and you want to take them. But, you do make more money per mile. You make a lot, the best money per mile. So those long rides are often better to drive there and then just drive straight back without a passenger than if you were to do a bunch of short rides.
Okay. So that's another good question. When you pick somebody up, you have no idea where they want to go.
Yeah, on Uber and Lyft, you have absolutely no idea where they want to go. I mean, the average ride is about 3 to 5 miles, but they could, potentially, I think there's a limit from Lyft and Uber of 100 miles or something like that. But,
we're going on a cross-country road trip. Let's do this.
Yeah, and I mean, at that point, you're going to get paid the whole way along, so it might be fun. But yeah,
that would be okay. Do you any crazy passenger stories, like people showing up just wasted, or I don't know, what else would happen? But
yeah, I mean, I haven't had any bad experiences, but there's definitely some pretty funny ones that come up. And since I drive late nights and holidays and things like that, when you make the most money, you also tend to obviously people are going to be drinking the most, right? And I had a pretty funny ride just the other night where I picked up a few guys, and they've been partying at their apartment, and they were ready to go out. Okay. And I literally drove them 30. They were kind of far from the bars too. I drove them 30 minutes all the way to the bars.
So they had to get good and ready before they had a long drive.
They were good and ready to go. I mean, they were real funny guys, and pull up to the door of the bar. And one guy forgot his ID.
Oh, geez.
And I just looked at, and the other guys, man, their face just went from instant smiles to instant sadness. We drove all the way back.
That's a buzzkill.
Yeah, and they were telling me how sorry they were, and I said, oh, I'm actually getting paid for this ride, so I actually don't mind driving all the way back. And yeah, so you get some pretty funny stories, and I always tell my single friends it's great to meet girls. I'm married, but you get a lot of attractive young ladies, and I'm sure that if you're single, you could I don't know if you're blurring the ethical lines.
Smooth talk your way into a date on your drive. Hey, I'm going out with my taxi driver now. How did you guys meet? Oh, we met in Uber.
I was her driver. Exactly.
Cool.
It's the new Match.com.
There you go. That's not a bad way to do it. It's I don't know. am been off the dating game for so many years. I don't even know. I was going to ask, is there any special like insurance or anything you've got to do to make sure you're protected liability wise and just like your car is protected if something happens?
Yeah, definitely. So that is kind of an issue that's come up over the past few months, and it's kind of in the news a lot because, as these are both such new and innovative forms of transportation, there really aren't a ton of laws governing it. So that's been kind of a big fight between personal insurance companies because as it stands now, you have personal insurance and that covers you until you pick up a passenger. And once you pick up a passenger with Uber and Lyft, then their insurance becomes primary. So they call it the insurance gap. So there's a period where you're kind of driving around and your personal insurance is supposed to be covering you when you're looking for a passenger. But obviously your insurance, they don't want to cover you for that part because you're kind of in that gray area. Are you a personal driver at that point or are you commercial? So, things like that. There's a couple bills that are being worked out right now. But, so there's a tiny bit of risk, I'd say there. But, it's when you want to do something kind of new and, since it's so disruptive, I think there's always going to be things like that, little issues that pop up.
Yeah. What's the additional cost for the kind of the commercial rider?
Well, so for me, I just use my personal insurance, and so for me, there's absolutely no additional cost.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you're saying like the company
Uber
provides.
and Lyft,
Okay.
Obviously there is a cost. Obviously, it's built into their fare.
I got you.
And I think where it eventually will be. I think where it's headed is that Uber and Lyft are going to basically cover you whenever you have the app on, and they're kind of just working out, the limits and the details and things like that. Because obviously rideshare is here to stay. I mean, I think you can pretty much almost ask anyone now if they've even heard of Uber or Lyft, and you get a pretty good chance that they've at least heard of the companies.
Do you get stink eye from like cab drivers and stuff?
At first, it was kind of, when I first started, there were definitely, there was a little tension still between the cab drivers and Uber and Lyft drivers, which is understandable, right? Because you're cutting into their business. But I think it's kind of been a good thing for competition just because, I used to pretty much abhor taking a taxi. It was literally the last thing on earth that I wanted to do just because it was so inconvenient. How do you even call these guys? You have to get cash, right? Because they don't accept credit cards.
Yeah, or if they do, they're like horribly grouchy about it.
Yeah. And, it's like, what businesses in America these days don't take credit card, first of all? And, it was just such an unpleasant experience. And then Uber and Lyft come along and kind of just, fill something that needed, that you needed that for so long. And, so.
On top of that, you just feel cool. Like, I'm just like hailing a car with my phone. Like I don't know. I felt like I was living in the future.
Oh yeah, definitely. You definitely feel cool, and you call an app and you tell your friends, "Hey, I'm going to leave," and you say, "Oh, how are you getting home?" "Oh, my Uber's here." Right?
See, guys, that's awesome. Now, since you are getting a 1099 from these companies, I assume you can deduct pretty much every mile you drive. Like, can you deduct other maintenance expenses, or what's the rule on that stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So that's kind of what I try to do. I run a blog and a podcast for rideshare drivers at TheRideshareGuy. And, since I kind of come from a personal finance background, I have a personal finance blog too. And, so I'm really into that analytics side, figuring out how much you can make, how to optimize your earnings. And then, of course, taxes, because as 1099, it's pretty much as aggressive as you want to be. There's quite a few deductions. And so as a driver, as soon as I leave my house, I start my odometer, and so all the miles that I'm driving in between and everything, I deduct those, and that's 56.5 cents a mile. And so you take that deduction, and that kind of covers, it's the standard mileage deduction instead of deducting individually oil changes and things like that.
Is there an app you use for that, or just you're using it on the car?
I'm actually trying out quite a few apps right now because I really want to find what's the easiest and the best. And so right now I'm playing around with an app called Metro Mile, and it's a pretty cool app. It attaches to your OB2 port in your car, which is your car's onboard computer. And so basically it has a GPS in it, and it tracks all your trips for you.
Oh, wow.
So as soon as you turn on the car, it's tracking. Because the problem I was running into was I was always forgetting to reset the trip odometer.
Yeah.
So I would end the night and I say, "Oh, crap, how many miles did I just drive?"
Yeah.
And so that was kind of a big problem. But as anyone who's kind of been able to take that mileage deduction might know that, you get 56.5 cents a mile, and the more economical your car is, the more that mileage deduction is going to save you on your taxes.
Yeah, so if you're driving people around in a Suburban, maybe you're using the most of that, and if you're driving around in a Prius, maybe you're getting a little bit more benefit out of it. Now that's an interesting one. And so that does that stand in place of oil changes, new tires, all that stuff?
Yeah, so usually what they say is the more economical your car is, the better off you'll be taking that standard deduction of 56.5 cents a mile. The alternative is you can calculate, your new tires, your oil changes, anything, any type of repairs done to your car, and gas and things like that, anything that's required to run your car. And usually, so what they say is, the more economical, you can still calculate it, but the better your chances are that, the standard mileage deduction will come out ahead. And I've calculated in the past, and it's pretty much not even close.
Yeah.
And it's kind of always come out ahead. But, if you did drive something like a Suburban or something like, or maybe a huge SUV, then it might make sense to try and calculate and see what's going to give you the bigger deduction.
Any other deductions for drivers?
There's a couple other, things. I mean, I'm pretty aggressive when it comes to my taxes. I did a podcast that kind of explains what I do on my taxes. And, as a driver, you can definitely, the biggest one is that mileage. But, if you're providing any type of snacks or water or anything like that, you can also deduct that. I try to kind of take advantage of the mileage deduction as much as possible. If I'm going to go from Orange County to LA and I, do rideshare while I'm up there in LA, I'm going to deduct all the miles from my drive from Orange County to LA. And, I justify it by saying that, the rideshare is better in LA, you get more rides. And, if I happen to run a couple personal errands while I'm in LA, then, so be it.
Okay. There's something to that, right? Like, so what if I'm not picking anybody else? There's no demand out here in the boonies, but hey, I was available. I was driving around.
I mean, that's kind of a trick that I picked up from being a landlord. There are a lot of landlords who have properties in other cities, and when they go and visit that property for make sure if they need to do maintenance or whatever they need to do, they'll deduct all of those miles. Yep. And then food, and you can deduct your meals and things like that. So while you're on the clock, you can deduct meals and things like that.
Interesting. So you mentioned like food and water. Are you like do you stock a cooler in the back to try and earn some more tips?
For a while there, I was doing water. I was doing just basics, kind of like water and gum and mints. And, I didn't really find that I was getting that much better tips. Okay. So I kind of shied away from it. And obviously, it cuts into your earnings. So that's the other thing to consider.
Yeah, my one driver I thought was pretty savvy about this, especially knowing it was my first ride, and it was like a $25 free credit for your first ride or something.
Yeah.
And so he like takes my phone and shows me like, okay, now so here's how it works. Here's like the standard fare for the ride is $18. He's like, if you hit this button, if you thought I sucked, you can make it go down, and like a little smiley face like gets to be like a sad balloon. And he's like, or if you thought I was really cool, you can hit this button. Of course, he like maxes it out, and the balloon is like ecstatic.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, shoot, it was a free ride up to $25 anyway, so I might as well max it out. And so he earned some money for showing me how it worked, and being a good side hustler, and it was all free anyway. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's definitely, I like that. I've kind of heard that's kind of, because you don't want to quite ask for tips, but, so we're, as drivers, we're kind of always thinking, right? Because we want tips. That means we make more, but you kind of want to be as discreet as possible. And that's kind of one of the ideas I was tossing around with a few buddies a few weeks ago that, what about if you ask them, hey, do you want me to show you how to add a tip? Because it's a little confusing, right?
Yeah, I was like, oh, is this your first ride? Like, I don't know. I guess you'll probably show on their profile if this is their first ride.
Yeah, it says a new rider if they don't have any stars or any rating.
Yeah, so somebody took a gamble on me. They didn't know if I was going to be a 5-star person or a 1-star person.
Yeah, and so what did they rate you?
Shoot, I don't know. How do I go look?
You might not be able to check as a passenger. I guess you can ask your next driver.
All right, I would hope I hope that guy gave me a 5. I'd give him a good tip. Awesome. Harry, thanks so much for coming on the show. Everybody, if you want to learn more about this stuff, it's TheRideshareGuy.com. And I understand you can get a sign-on bonus if people go through your link.
Yeah, definitely. I can shoot you a link to put in the show notes. But right now, if you sign on with Lyft, you get a referral bonus up to $250, depending on the city that you sign up with. And then whatever referral bonus you get, I get the same one. So it's kind of like a win-win.
Wow, very cool, very cool. Yeah, we'll definitely link see that up in the show notes. Again, thanks so much. We'll wrap it up with your number one tip for Side Hustle Nation.
Yeah, definitely. I think my number one tip is kind of got to be, I think it's always best to kind of think outside the box. Like when I started off with this Lyft and Uber, I definitely had some friends that say, hey, you're supposed to be taking it as a passenger, not driving other people around. And, I didn't really care what they thought. I kind of just went off on my own and said, you know what, I think this sounds like a good idea. I'm going to try it. And I couldn't have been happier. Hopefully that tip wasn't too long.
No, that works. That's the whole premise of the podcast, is trying something out and seeing if you like it and seeing if it works. And obviously in this case it has. So very, very cool stuff. Thanks so much, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Nick.
This edition of the Side Hustle Show is brought to you by Ting, Ting. Now, earlier this year, Brian and I switched our cell phone provider from Verizon to Ting. And I'm really excited about this switch because our monthly bill is less than half of what it was, which means we're going to save over $800 this year. It's like free money. Ting operates on the Sprint network, which means you can bring any Sprint-enabled device. And for us, that meant we were able to keep our beloved iPhones and keep our same phone numbers. If you visit sidehustlenation.com/Ting, you're going to get a free $25 credit toward your first month of service or toward a new device. And if you're still under contract, they'll even pay up to $75 of your early termination fee to incentivize the switch. Again, that's sidehustlenation.com/Ting for your free $25 sign-up credit. So again, all of my notes and highlights from this call with Harry are available in a free downloadable PDF at sidehustlenation.com/74 or in the episode description of your podcast player app. And I think Harry's comment at the end about thinking outside the box and being willing to try something new really speaks to this like larger marketplace theory. So what I mean by that is in every transaction, there's a buyer and a seller, whether it's on Lyft or Uber or Amazon or Etsy or Fiverr or Udemy or Elance or wherever. By going where the buyers already are, maybe you can think of something to sell where there's already a proven demand. And I'm going to leave it at that and let the creative juices flow. But if you're a part of this up and coming rideshare economy, let me know in the comments of this episode what you thought. And if you'd like to test it out as either a rider or a driver, there are some special discount and bonus codes for you in the show notes at sidehustlenation.com/74. That's it for the show. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, go out there and make something happen. And I'll see you next week in episode 75. Hustle on.
Thanks for listening to The Side Hustle Show at www.sidehustlenation.com.